When everyone turned away from injustice, he stood up alone and nearly paid with his freedom for doing what's right. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, because this is a story that proves silence becomes guilt when no one acts. A cold bottle of water was poured straight onto the woman's head. She screamed. The water drenched her matted hair, dripped down her face, soaked into her worn, torn shirt. No one stepped in, no one said a word. A small boy nearby even laughed, the man who poured the water. An angry shop clerk still had her wrist gripped tightly in one hand, hissing, "You think people like you belong in stores like this?" Go back to the gutter. The smell of sweat, garbage, and cheap detergent filled the humid air inside the tiny slum shop. Just another makeshift store in the heart of Dharavi, Mumbai's most crowded, most forgotten neighborhood. Then a low, steady voice cut through the scene. "That's enough." Not loud, but something in the tone made the entire shop freeze for half a second, heads turn. At the far end of the aisle, stepping out from a patch of shadow, stood a man dressed in a dark button-down shirt and jeans, a baseball cap pulled low over his face. In one hand, he held a bottle of water he hadn't yet paid for. He wasn't bulky, he wasn't loud, but something about the way he stood made the room hesitate. It was Keanu Reeves, but no one recognized him. The young clerk spat on the ground and stepped forward, defensive. "Who the hell are you? Another foreigner here to lecture us." Keanu didn't flinch. He took one step forward, just enough to draw a clear line between himself and the humiliated woman, now dripping and shivering behind him. She didn't steal anything. And even if she had, this isn't how you treat people. Silence. Then footsteps, 3 of them. A group of 4 young men had entered the shop, loud, smug, reeking of authority in a place that had no police. Open shirts, cheap chains, eyes that didn't blink. One of them snickered. "What's this? Some hero trying to save a damsel in Dharavi?" Their leader tapped a metal rod against his hand, casual but threatening. The group moved in, surrounding Keanu, blocking off the exit. No one knew who this man was. But at that moment, on that dusty street corner, in a forgotten shop surrounded by silence, sweat, and the weight of 1,000 ignored cries, someone finally chose not to look away. The man with the metal rod stepped forward, tapping it lightly against his palm, his eyes scanning Keanu like a predator sizing up unfamiliar prey. "Do you even know where you are around here? People like you don't get to tell us what's right or wrong." Keanu didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply stood unshaken, calm but unwavering, and in his eyes, nothing but resolve. Another thug, heavier tattooed arms crossed, gave a sneer. "Foreigner, huh? You here to save the slums, white savior style?" He turned to his crew and chuckled. The laughter spread, thin, sharp, not joyful, but toxic. Outside, a few locals stood near the store entrance, watching, listening. But no one said a word, because here, being right didn't mean being safe. An older woman tugged her child by the arm. "Let's go, sweetheart. These things aren't for people like us to get involved in." Keanu remained silent, still holding the water bottle as if that single object anchored the tension around him. One of the group, lean and wiry with sharp eyes, suddenly stepped in and swiped at Keanu's hand, trying to knock the bottle away. But in that exact moment, with the slightest motion of intent, Keanu caught the attacker's wrist, not with force, not with violence, but with a precision that froze the room. He stared into the man's eyes. "Don't do something you'll regret." The energy shifted. The crowd, once disengaged, now murmured. One of the gang members took a half step back, but the leader with the rod didn't budge. His voice turned colder. "You think you're someone?" Keanu released the man's wrist slowly, without looking away. He didn't answer. The tension thickened, like the moment before a monsoon breaks, and then The leader raised the metal rod, lifted it shoulder high. Steel clinked against cracked tile. A sharp breath. A collective pause from those who had seen how these scenes usually ended. But this time, it might not end the usual way. The metal rod came swinging down, fast, sharp. Aimed straight for Keanu's shoulder, but before it could land, Keanu pivoted to his left, shifted his stance half a step back, caught the attacker's wrist, and with a smooth twist of his torso, threw the man to the ground. Hard, but clean. The rod clattered across the tile floor. No one had time to process what they'd seen. The man who just moments ago was leading the threats now lay crumpled, groaning, holding his arm, fear and shock in his eyes. The second thug lunged, reaching for a knife at his belt. Keanu moved first, a low, precise kick straight to the knee. The man buckled, and in an instant Keanu had pressed him down, disarmed him before the blade even left its sheath. From outside, whispers began to ripple. He knows how to fight. That's not street brawling, that's trained movement. The last two men hesitated. One of them grabbed a glass bottle from the shelf, but Keanu took a step forward, his open palm raised, signaling, "Enough." His voice wasn't loud, but it was steel. "I'm not here to fight. But if you try to hurt someone, I won't stand by." The others froze slowly. They backed away, dragging their injured friend upright. One muttered, "Who the hell is this guy?" Then from outside, a police siren. A dusty, dented squad car screeched to a halt. 3 officers jumped out, handguns slung lazily at their hips. Faces already annoyed, expressions ready to blame. One of them shouted, "What's going on here?" The man with the bruised arm didn't miss a beat. "That guy. He attacked us, the foreigner. He's dangerous. No questions, no hesitation." The officers stormed inside, one of them jabbing a finger into Keanu's chest. "You think you can do whatever you want? This isn't America. You have no rights here." Keanu opened his mouth. But before he could speak, his hands were cuffed. Behind him, the woman with soaked hair still sat trembling, still small. But now, for the first time that day, her eyes no longer looked hopeless. No one had seen this coming. The only man who stood up for what was right was the one now being taken away. The iron door of the police station slammed shut behind Keanu with a cold metallic thud. He was pushed into a small room with yellowing lights, peeling walls, and a ceiling fan that squeaked without actually cooling the air. The smell of mildew and stale sweat hung thick in the air. 3 officers sat around a warped wooden table. They didn't look at Keanu like someone they needed to question. They looked at him like something to be processed for profit. One of them, middle-aged, overweight, patchy beard, grabbed a folder and smirked. "Name, nationality, what are you doing here?" Keanu answered briefly, honestly. But each answer only made them chuckle louder. Another officer, younger, rested his chin on his palm and looked at Keanu as if trying to estimate a price tag. "You assaulted locals, disturbed public order. That's a crime." Keanu looked up. "I acted in self-defense and to protect someone." The man waved a dismissive hand, like shooing away a fly. "Here it's not about who started it, it's about who understands how things work." The third officer, youngest, skinny, with sharp eyes, laughed as he leaned forward. "You know, I could film a video saying you attacked a woman. No one here checks facts. You'd be an international scandal in 24 hours. All 3 burst out laughing. Keanu didn't flinch. He sat still, eyes forward, not tense, not afraid. But clearly in this place, logic was just noise they chose not to hear. After a pause, the first officer crossed one leg over the other and leaned back. "We don't care who you are, but if you want to walk out of here soon, I think you know what to do." He tapped 2 fingers against the tabletop. His eyes didn't ask. They demanded like someone naming a price without saying a word. The room felt heavy. Right and wrong had been traded in for negotiation. What they didn't know was the man sitting across from them wasn't used to paying for dignity. The young officer raised his phone. "Camera on. We're going to ask you a few things. You should answer the right way. Got it?" Keanu stared into the lens. No nod, no smile, just silence. The officer began. "Why did you come to India? What's your purpose here? Why Dharavi if not to stir up trouble?" One hand held the phone, the other tapped his pistol grip with theatrical ease. The heavier officer chimed in, pretending to sound helpful. "You know we could keep you here a whole week without paperwork? Or if you cooperate, you might walk out tonight." Keanu didn't flinch. His eyes didn't carry anger, but they made it clear no one was crossing any lines with him. The younger cop smirked and brought the phone closer. "I don't think you get it. We're giving you a way out. If this video goes public, people might believe you came here for something filthy." Then he turned the camera toward himself, grinning, giving a fake thumbs up like he was recording a victory. One small problem. The station door opened. A man in high-ranking police uniform stepped in. Shoulders stiff with epaulets, eyes sharp as glass. He didn't speak immediately. He simply took in the scene. 3 officers crowding a foreigner in cuffs, a camera recording. "The smell of something off," he said slowly. "What is going on here?" Silence. The young officer quickly lowered the phone and stood up stiff. "Sir, just questioning a troublemaker, nothing serious." The senior officer walked forward, his eyes now fixed on Keanu. Then he stopped. He stared harder. His brow furrowed, and the next words shattered the room. Keanu Reeves, silence. The young officer went pale. The heavy one took a step back, dropping his hand from his waist. For the first time, Keanu gave a small nod. No arrogance, no relief, just a quiet confirmation that yes, he was exactly who they feared he might be. Nothing else needed to be said. The truth had just spoken for itself. The room felt frozen. The words Keanu Reeves had only been spoken for seconds, and already the 3 officers looked drained of color. The chief stepped slowly toward the table. His eyes moved from Keanu's face to the handcuffs, then his voice, low, firm, cut through the silence. "Take them off." No one hesitated. The young officer scrambled to unlock the cuffs, fingers trembling. Keanu rose, rubbed his wrists gently, then nodded in quiet thanks, not because he was free, but because someone had finally chosen to do the right thing. The chief turned toward his men. His voice wasn't loud, but it hit like a slap. "I want a full report and the CCTV footage. If it's missing, your jobs are too." Heads dropped. No one dared reply. They all knew this time there'd be no sweeping it under the rug. Then the chief faced Keanu. "I apologize. I can't undo what they've done, but I'll take full responsibility." Keanu looked at him for a moment, then spoke calmly. "I don't need an apology for myself. I'm fine. But someone else isn't." The chief frowned. "Who, the woman? The one who was humiliated in the store, drenched with water, called trash?" There was a pause, then the chief nodded. Slowly, deliberately, not just hearing, but committing. "I'll handle it personally." Keanu nodded once more, then sat back down, this time unbound. No one asked him anything. No one pushed, but neither did he boast or demand. Because Keanu knew sometimes justice doesn't come through pressure. It comes when someone finally chooses to look the truth in the eye. A police jeep pulled up in front of the small corner shop where it all began. The police chief stepped out first, followed by Keanu and a younger officer. There were no announcements, no sirens, no cameras. Just a silence heavier than the midday heat of Dharavi. The woman, same worn clothes, same cracked sandals, was sitting near the sidewalk collecting discarded plastic bottles. When she noticed figures approaching, her body tensed. She instinctively curled in on herself, a reflex built over years of being blamed, yelled at and pushed aside. But this time there were no threats, no shouting, no accusations. Only the police chief standing upright, hat in hand. His voice was low, steady, not rehearsed. "I'm sorry for what happened to you. No one should be treated like that, regardless of who they are." She looked up, confused, wary. She wasn't used to words that didn't carry judgment. She wasn't used to a man standing beside her to block the sun. Keanu saying nothing, simply present. The young officer behind them lowered his head. He had been one of those who stood by and did nothing. Now he bowed deep and didn't rise for several seconds. The chief extended both hands and did something no one expected. He apologized with a full traditional double-handed bow. The woman froze. Her mouth opened, then closed. I didn't steal anything. I was just hungry. I just wanted to see if there was something cheap. Keanu took one step forward, his voice warm but firm. "You don't need to apologize for being poor. But there are people who need to apologize for treating you like less." For the first time, her lips moved, not in defense, but to whisper two words. "Thank you." Not for rice, not for bread, not for pity, but for the reminder that she was still a person, seen and worth standing beside. The woman bowed slightly in thanks, then stood up. Still small, still thin, but her steps no longer curled inward. She looked around, and for the first time, she noticed people were looking at her differently. No more judgmental stares, no more narrowed eyes of suspicion. Just silence, but a silence filled with something new. Respect. A vegetable vendor nearby, someone who once called her a clingy beggar, stepped forward and handed her a small bag. "It's not much, but it's mine." A child. The same boy who had laughed when water was poured on her, walked over holding an unopened bottle of water. He extended it timidly, eyes down. "I'm sorry." She froze, then bowed her head gently. Across the street, the shop clerk, the one who poured the water, stood half hidden behind a shelf. He didn't dare step out, but everyone could see the color drained from his face. Not out of fear of punishment, but because for the first time, someone had made him see himself. Keanu didn't speak. He stood quietly watching. Not for applause, not for credit, just watching. A middle-aged man, one who had once muttered, "Call the police," walked over to Keanu. "I always thought this kind of thing was normal. But today, I saw I was wrong." Keanu nodded softly. Realizing it is the first step, don't forget the next one. It wasn't a lecture, it was a reminder, so that awakening doesn't die in silence. And so, in a forgotten corner of Dharavi, where it seemed there was only poverty, bitterness, and hardened eyes, something rare began to bloom: hope. Not born from money, not from foreign aid, but from the way one human treated another. After the crowd dispersed and the afternoon light began to fade from the rusted rooftops, Keanu stood alone outside the small shop. No one asked for a photo. No one even knew his name, but everyone remembered him as the man who stood when no one else would. The woman now sat quietly at a roadside tea stand holding a warm glass. No one told her to leave. No one stared. She was no longer the suspect, just another person like everyone else. The police chief returned to his jeep. He didn't speak, but his final glance wasn't that of a man representing authority. It was the look of someone who'd just been reminded how to be human. Keanu looked up at the Mumbai sky at dusk. Streaks of smoke and dust cutting through orange and red. Just like the cracks in this society, not all wounds can be erased, but some deserve to be acknowledged, so no one pretends they were never there. A young boy ran by, paused for a moment, then waved. Keanu waved back. No words, no name, no applause, just leaving the same way he arrived, silently, but leaving behind a place that would never be quite the same again. There were no statues made. No headlines, no viral clips, just eyes that now looked slower, before judging, hearts that paused before assuming, and a dusty alleyway in Mumbai that became the place where once one human treated another with kindness that didn't need a reason. 3 days later, a post appeared on a small expat forum in Mumbai. The title was simple: I came to India to explore culture. But that day, I relearned how to be human, thanks to a stranger. No name, no hashtags, no attempt to go viral. Just a young traveler who happened to be in that tiny convenience store quietly witnessed it all, and later sat down to write what the cameras didn't see, but what hearts couldn't forget. He didn't say who he was, he didn't yell, he didn't need to. But everything changed because he was the only one who didn't turn away. The post was later reshared by an independent photographer with the caption, I don't know his name, but I saw him stand between a woman and humiliation, while everyone else stood back and laughed, and then no one was laughing anymore. From a quiet blog, the story began, making its way into international circles, human rights forums, film discussion groups, Reddit, Twitter. One blue-check account commented, "If that really was Keanu Reeves, then I finally understand why they call him the last good man in Hollywood." And so a quiet ripple began to spread from Dharavi, not loud, not manufactured, just people reading, and then quietly looking inward. Some things don't need to be pushed into virality. They just need to be real enough to live inside the people who read them. Within 48 hours, the original posts had been translated into over a dozen languages. A high school teacher in Canada printed the story out and read it aloud during a civics class. A journalist in Spain opened their article with a question. If you had been there that day, would you have done anything differently? A blogger in Japan shared a quiet reflection. The world isn't short on celebrities, but very few leave behind something you don't quote. You just remember how they made you feel. In Vietnam, a group of media students launched a research project titled The Power of Unfilmed Kindness: How Silent Actions Spread Without an Audience. One social media account with millions of followers reposted the story with a caption, "He didn't try to move anyone, and yet the whole world paused just long enough to ask, when was the last time I turned away without even noticing?" There was no marketing campaign, no sponsored content, but every person who shared it felt like they needed to do something differently. One comment pinned on the most reshared post simply read, "I've seen this happen before, but I've never been the one who stood up next time. I want to be." And that's something no algorithm can manufacture. A shift that starts inside, not from guilt, not from fear, but because something was so real, you couldn't pretend not to feel it. One photo was posted on an anonymous account, no hashtag, no dramatic caption, just a single frame taken from behind of a man in a dark shirt walking down an old alley in Dharavi, empty-handed, a worn backpack over one shoulder, as the evening sun lit up his back like the whole city was trying to hold on to a little of that light. No one tagged his name. No one needed to ask, "Who is that?" Because anyone who had read, seen, or heard already knew. There was no need for a biography, no need for an introduction. Just one man who stood when no one else did, and then walked away without waiting for recognition. The world is loud. People speak more, perform more, compete to be seen. But sometimes, what we remember the longest is the person who chose silence at the right time in the right way for the right reason. Because kindness isn't a slogan. It's a decision made in a hard moment for someone you don't know. In a place where no one expected to see something that human, and the story ends here. Not because there's nothing more to say, but because what remains is yours to live from now on.